Welcome you all to Home Tutor. This is your personal teacher Nepa Nipin. Today we will be discussing the chapter French Revolution. This is the chapter 1 for the 9th standard history children. Then here in the session that is part 4, we'll be dealing the outbreak of the revolution. For our better convenience, I have been divided this topic into two. So today we'll be studying the subtopic, the Estates General and the National Assembly. The outbreak of the revolution. Louis XVI had to increase taxes for reasons you have learned in the previous section. How do you think he could have gone about doing this? In France of the old regime, the monarch did not have the power to impose taxes according to his will alone. Rather, he had to call a meeting of the Estates General, which would then pass his proposals for new taxes. The Estates General was a political body to which the three estates sent their representatives. However, the monarch alone could decide when to call a meeting of this body. The last time it was done was in 1614. Okay, then we can discuss the topic, the outbreak of the revolution. King Louis started to increase tax for many reasons, like to meet the expenses of the government. You have already learned about this in previous topics, so please go through that topics before you watch the session. Again, let's come back to the topic. So, do you think that in such a way a king can increase tax according to his will? Do you think that? In the olden times before 1789, during the old regime. Okay, so then what is old regime? So old regime means that it is a form of government and society that prevailed in France before 1789. So during the old regime, the king doesn't have the power to impose tax by his will alone. If the king wanted to increase the tax or to introduce a new system of taxation, he must consult and call a meeting of Estates General and they together decide in that matter. We have already discussed about Estate Generals too in detail in previous, that is in part 2. So if you want to know about that, please again go through part 1 so that you can refresh and there will be a continuity for part 4. The member of the third general estates choose a representative and send to the estate general, which is a political body. The interesting fact about estate general is that however powerful is the estate general, the final decision to call a meeting lies in the hand of the monarch. The last meeting of estate general was called in 1614 in the old regime period. On 5th May 1789, Louis XVI called together an assembly of the Estates General to pass proposals for new taxes. A resplendent hall in Versailles was prepared to host the delegates. The first and the second estates sent 300 representatives each, who were seated in rows facing each other on two sides, while the 600 members of the Third Estate had to stand at the back. The Third Estate was represented by its more prosperous and educated members. Peasants, artisans, and women were denied entry to the assembly. However, their grievances and demands were listed in some 40,000 letters which the representatives had brought with them. In 1789, May 5th, Louis King XVI called Estates General for a meeting to pass proposals for new taxation system. A splendid hall in Versailles witnessed the meeting. 300 delegates participated from the first and second estates, and their seating arrangements were in such a way that they seated in rows facing each other on two sides, and the 600 delegates from the lower society, the third estate, were asked to stand at the back. Even though the third estate members sent their representatives who were very much prosperous and educated, peasants, that is farmers, then artisans, that is people who engaged in craft works, and women were denied to enter to the assembly. till their presence were shown, with their grievances were expressed, their demands were discussed through 40,000 letters brought by the representatives to the Assembly Hall. Voting in the Estates General in the past had been conducted according to the principle that each state had one vote. This time too, Louis XVI was determined to continue the same practice. But members of the Third Estate demanded that voting now be conducted by the Assembly as a whole, where each member would have one vote. This was one of the democratic principles put forward by philosophers like Rousseau in his book The Social Contract. When the king rejected this proposal, members of the Third Estate walked out of the assembly in protest. In this paragraph, we will discuss about the voting system prevailed in France. One ought for one estate was a system followed during old regime. This system of voting was planned to follow on 5th May 1789 by King Louis XVI in the Estates General Assembly. At this point, the member of the Third Estate demanded to conduct voting for the whole assembly, that is that is one member, one vote. And this was one of the most important democratic principles recommended by Rousseau in his book The Social Contract. The king rejected this proposal, and finally the members of the Third Estate walked out of the assembly to show their protest. The representatives of the Third Estate viewed themselves as spokesmen for the whole French nation. On 20 June they assembled in the hall of an indoor tennis court in the grounds of Versailles. They declared themselves as National Assembly and sworn not to disperse till they had drafted a constitution for France that would limit the power of the monarch. They were led by Mirabeau and Abbesius. Mirabeau was born in a noble family but was convinced of the need to do away with a society of feudal privilege. He brought out a journal and delivered powerful speeches to the crowds assembled at Versailles. Abbesius, originally a priest, wrote an influential pamphlet called What is the Third Estate? The representatives of the Third Estate considered themselves as a spokesman, that is, a person who speaks for or on behalf of a group or individual of the whole France nation. So he may be called as a spokesman. On 20th of June, the Third Estate people assembled in the hall of an indoor tennis court ground of Versailles to constitute the National Assembly. Their intention was to draft or make a constitution for the French people to limit the power of the monarch. They decided strongly not to disperse until they succeeded. Two main leaders who guided the Third Estate people were Mirabeau and Abbesius. Mirabeau was born in as a high-class noble family but wanted a society free from feudal exploitation. He introduced a journal and also delivered powerful speeches in the crowded areas of Versailles. Abbesius was a priest who wrote influential pamphlets called What is the Third Estate? So what is the pamphlet? So pamphlet is a small booklet or leaflet containing informations or arguments about a single subject. So here also the subject of the priest, that is Abbesius, was the Third Estate. So let's discuss figure 5. The tennis court oath, preparatory sketch for a large painting by Jacques Louis David. The painting was intended to be hung in the National Assembly. So the tennis court means it was a hall, that is an indoor stadium in Versailles. The people from different estates are taking oath in this hall that they are damn sure or they are definite that they will continue in the National Assembly till the work of the Constitution of France is complete. In order to that, the whole people of different estates have gathered together and they are taking the oath. So this is a picturization by the great painter Jacques Louis David, and his intention was to hang this in the National Assembly. But the National Assembly, again, we have to study that in the next topics, that it doesn't had a long future, and so we can see another type of government and situations in France in the future times. So we are concluding this portion right now. So we have completed till part 4 of the first chapter, French Revolution, and the continuation of this chapter will be our next video. Please watch, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.